Then, as his fame continued to grow, he was introduced to Leonard Chess of Chess Records, where he recorded his first song, and it was a top 10 hit according to M. Kemp's article titled Chuck Berry from the Rolling Stone from 2001, and the hit was titled Maybelline. Now that you have been informed of Chuck Berry's background, I will continue to discuss the beginning of his music career and further talk about his particular achievements. Chuck Berry went on to produce many more records, such as You Can't Catch Me and Roll Over Beethoven in 1956, School Days and Rock and Roll Music in 1957, and Johnny B. Good in 1958, all the while increasing in popularity around the country. With the production of his songs, he was introducing melodies and rhythms that became to define a form called rock and roll. This is stated by Dave Nicholson in the Washington Post from September 8, 1987, found on eLibrary database. Chuck Berry took what was starting to be rock and roll and transformed it into his own style that combined his interests in country, western, and blues music. His first hit, Maybelline, was a combination of his own guitar and creative rhyming lyrics, which he built off of for future hit records, which were all different renditions of country, western, and blues music. He was also writing and singing all of his own lyrics, which was different from any other musicians of his time. Berry brought the electric guitar to rock and roll, and he played it with ease, harnessing the skills he developed as a teenager. Barry Nicholson in the Washington Post from 1987 suggests that he codified the genre, defining rock and roll's subject matter. He sang about cars, boys and guitars, girls, and the urge for teenage freedom. He became renowned for his lyrics and the way he defined rock and roll. And the lyrics we listen to today and the songs we listen to can be traced back to the lyrics that Chuck Berry first wrote. The lyrics were so influential that they set the stage for how rock and roll would be heard. All of his achievements combined to make him one of the first inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And now that you are aware of some of Chuck Berry's achievements, I would like to talk about the significant impact his contribution made on society. Chuck Berry is one of the most influential musicians and songwriters whose songs and rhythms went on to powerfully enhance rock and roll and further influence other musicians. His legacy left so many things that his contemporaries borrowed for their own musical achievements. His guitar intro to get a crowd rocking in any setting was used by many bands and performers such as Elvis Presley, the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and the Rolling Stones. Berry's contemporaries also borrowed his showmanship. To summarize what Jay Perry wrote in the Rolling Stone from 2004, his fellow guitarists would play the guitar behind their heads and jam across the stage with lots of enthusiasm for rock and roll, mimicking Berry's showmanship. He wasn't only innovating rock and roll, he was impacting the rest of society. The American Cultural Leaders from 2001 wrote, Berry's lyrics captured the pulse of American teenage life, and his music became the blueprint of a generation of young guitarists. He was creating a wave of influence that would wash over future music lovers for years to come. Elvis Presley's music stemmed from Chuck Berry's, and he is noted for recording many of his songs. From there, both Elvis and Berry's styles reached England, where the Beatles found their voice, mimicking the lyrics of Chuck Berry's. As Jerry Perry writes in his article, Chuck Berry would tell a story in short sentences, and you could get a vivid picture in your mind in a very short amount of time. The lyrics copied his lyrical style, or the Beatles copied his lyrical style, becoming famous for the way their songs would tell stories. The music that Chuck Berry created inspired the works of Elvis Presley, the Beatles, and later the Rolling Stones. And what musician hasn't been inspired by Elvis Presley or the Beatles? Chuck Berry's brand of music evolved to influence musicians of our time and become the form of music we call pop. Even Bruno Mars on the website rapup.com is cited for saying how much of an impact Chuck Berry had on his music. His showmanship, his lyrics, his guitar intro and skills, his melodies, rhythms, and style all combined to give us rock and roll music and the music we continue to listen to today. Specifically, I've discussed Chuck Berry's background, his particular achievements, the significant impact his contribution made on society, and which all provides knowledge of the noteworthy impact that Chuck Berry made on the music industry. I hope that you understand how much of an impact that Chuck Berry's achievements have made on music, and I also hope that you are aware of his achievements that stemmed from his background. Chuck Berry will be and always has been the epitome of rock and roll, and his music will endure. Without him, there would be no Beatles or Rolling Stones, and can you imagine a world without rock and roll music? Elvis Presley is considered the king of rock and roll, but he took the crown from Chuck Berry.